evening. Very excited to break this one down. And it's two guys that I really respect, two guys that I really like. Why? They bring that grappling game plan. I got my Henzo Gracie sweatshirt on today. We got the crew neck on. And I'm excited about competition class tomorrow. I'm excited to continue getting after it on the mat. But you learn from guys like Renato Moicano and like Benoit Saint-Denis. Benoit Saint-Denis, maybe he didn't have the success he was looking for against Dustin Poirier in the end. He took a big risk. He fought a very talented fighter. He had some great positions. He had some good takedowns. He even had several serious back takes, but ultimately it wasn't enough. But did that tell you he has no upside in the division? I mean, he was putting a mauling on Dustin Poirier with his pressure, with his pace, with his ability to go out there and get the takedowns. And I think that, Dustin Poirier showed great instincts. I've done a video about this in the past, if you guys remember, where I talked about the guillotine threat from Dustin Poirier, how he was able to exhaust and fatigue Benoit Saint-Denis. That is a real, aspect of jiu-jitsu versus wrestling, right? How do you take on a guy with very good wrestling? You have to threaten them with guillotines. You have to at least put the thought in their mind that there's a risk putting your head forward, your neck forward. You have to basically force them into upright positions. Then you can try and push the head and the face away, kind of face mush them. If you're able to do that to somebody, you're able to stuff more takedowns. If you watch guys at the highest level in the UFC, oftentimes are pushing people down towards the end of the lever. They're trying to, get two hands on their neck or their face and force them to the end of the lever at the ankle where they're not able to be stable and hold on to a secure lock. I think that when you look at this fight, it presents some interesting challenges because we know a guy like Renato Moicano has very good grappling. That's his bread and butter in a lot of ways. And where he's had some struggles in the UFC has been people, knocking him the hell out, right? Like guys getting after him with the hands, guys hurting him on the feet, guys putting him down with big shots. That's been a lot of the problems for Renato Moicano. Oftentimes, his grappling has been a selling point, not a detriment. And when you look at Benoit Saint-Denis, oftentimes he's pushing the wrestling, the grappling, the pace as his primary weapon. We've seen him go out there and do that to very talented jiu-jitsu players, a la Thiago Moises. However, Thiago Moises has a little bit more of a wilt to his game than Renato Moicano. We saw Renato Moicano on the brink of being finished against Jalen Turner. And a lot of the problem there was Jalen Turner letting him off the hook, not having the right finishing instincts. But still, Renato Moicano from the brink of, collapse comes back and he's able to get on top, find the finish. And I believe that was his first win via KO or TKO in the UFC and maybe even as a professional. So Renato Moicano has shown a little bit of growth and a little bit of evolution. We've also seen, I think a lot of people forget if they're newer fans of the sport, at 155 pounds, he's leaned a lot more on his wrestling, his grappling, his takedowns. But if you look back at 145 pounds, there were times like when he fought Calvin Kattar, he absolutely dummied him with the striking. He used the calf kick. He used his ability to be, slicker with the lateral footwork. And he was able to use that to his advantage there and won a fight pretty cleanly against a guy who's known for his boxing and his ability to go out there and strike on the feet. So I think that we have a Renato Moicano who does have multifaceted skills. He can go out there and be a little bit of a range kickboxer. His problem is his chin, his durability has not really held up when he's been under scrutiny. And that's been the case at 155 pounds, most particularly. If you go back and look at the record, Renato Moicano, very talented fighter, but 3 losses via knockout. And like I said, there was a little bit of bad finishing instincts from Jalen Turner, kind of let him off the hook. Drew Dober had Renato Moicano in some serious bad positions with his power, was hurting Renato, but Renato was able to bail himself out with some pretty easy takedowns with some top control over Drew Dober. And that's been a sticking point throughout Drew Dober's career, a really serious flaw to his game, right? Getting flat backed on the mat at times. Then you look at the Brad Riddell fight. I mean, Brad Riddell, unfortunately, needed to take some time away. I think he's done that for a while. And honestly, he's just tremendously undersized. He was getting in a lot of wrestling and grappling exchanges that were negative EV throughout his career. I remember I bet Jalen Turner to submit him in the first round at pretty ridiculous odds. And, Riddell is just a smaller guy that shoots takedowns when he's under pressure. And if you do that against these big, long guys that are better at jiu-jitsu, it's just going to be a significant problem for you. So I didn't think that was a huge feather in Renato Moicano's cap. It was just a leveraging of his existing skill set. Well done there. I had a massive bet on RDA against Renato Moicano. And the one thing I will say is you got to give a lot of credit to the toughness of Renato Moicano. I mean, he got absolutely beat from pillar to post in that fight. If you guys go back and watch it, it was a beatdown. It was a veteran lesson if I've ever seen one. And he took it on short notice. He flew halfway across the world. There was a lot working against him there, but still, you got to expect, that this guy, Renato Moicano, the younger guy, the guy who's looking to make a rise in these divisions, could go in there and compete. And unfortunately, it wasn't until rounds 4 and 5 when the legend RDA started to slow down just a touch. And honestly, in my humble opinion, started to show a little bit of mercy to his Brazilian brother, that Renato Moicano was able to get a little bit of offense back. He was able to start walking forward a little bit in the fight with a lot of damage on his face. He was able to come forward, be a warrior, make it to the final bell. But ultimately, he got absolutely beat up in that fight. And it's a reminder of the fact that on the feet, if you just keep him there and you have a well-rounded game, you can compete with the kicks, you can compete with the punches. Renato Moicano is still there to be exploited by some of these top guys in the 155-pound class, in the 170-pound class. I think that was a catch weight fight of some kind with RDA. Let me check the weight class here on Tapology. Yeah, that was a 160-pound catch weight on short notice. But RDA has done his competing at 55 and 170. The Alexander Hernandez fight, another good win, goes out there, gets a submission, but Hernandez, a career underperformer. The Jai Herbert win has aged quite well in terms of going out there and getting the submission over a guy like Jai Herbert, who has been tough, gone out there and competed well with a lot of talented fighters. So hats off to Jai Herbert. Then you look at the Fiziev fight, again, that's where you see the power and the durability not really matching up there. He got clipped early and put down badly with the left hook in that fight. He beat Damir Hadzovic, and in one of my favorite moments of all time, he instantly submits Damir Hadzovic, and then he looks at him and he's like, "I wanted to keep fighting," and Hadzovic says, "Well, then you shouldn't have submitted me," with so much earnest in his heart. And that for me is just a great all-time moment. If you haven't watched that, go back and watch it. Hilarity in mixed martial arts. He didn't understand that he was the one that ended the fight early. Then you look at the Chan Sung Jung fight. Another example, this one at 145 of him getting clipped, getting knocked out. He got beat up to the body by Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo chased him down like a man possessed. So we've seen the durability as a constant refrain throughout his career. And I do think that Benoit Saint-Denis hits very hard. If you look at his career resume, he has 4 wins via KO or TKO, 9 wins via submission. But a lot of times he breaks guys down with his strikes, and then he gets on top of them and out-grapples them, or he gets on top of them, beats them up with some strikes, they turn in, and then he gets the choke. So I think that it's the kind of fight where, you're going to see brute strength, pace, aggression, dogged determination, and power against better techniques, right? I think that Renato Moicano does have better techniques, but I think that when you look at his durability, I'm not sure it's the same as Benoit Saint-Denis. Benoit did get knocked out by Dustin Poirier. Realistically, I think Renato Moicano would either submit Dustin Poirier or get viciously knocked out by Dustin Poirier if they were to fight as well. That's just the way that I see it going. Shout out to Gold Caps in the chat, says Moicano, best jits in the lightweight division. There's a case to be made there, but he didn't really show that against RDA, for example. Just something to consider. He did. RDA is my boy, but he got taken down 11 times by Fiziev, by Gamrot. A lot of these lightweights have blended together in my mind. Excuse me. Jewish Better says he was eating steak in Brazil, drinking beer. Is he not doing that now? Is Gomes and Brito canceled? Says my guy Zell. Shout out to him. He says my boy Liam. Zell, I'm not sure. I think that there's definitely rumblings in that direction that Brito might be booked in a bigger fight, but I'm not sure. is the God's honest truth. Looking at Topology, it's still listed there. I definitely saw some things on social media. So before we get too deep into that fight, we'll definitely look at their social media. We'll try and see if their Instagram stories has something to tell us, in terms of whether or not that fight has been officially canceled at this stage of the game. Mark Schillingberg says Moicano showed a hell of a chin versus Dos Anjos. Yes, he did, but that was also a catchweight bout, which is something to consider. And also, RDA is not the most heavy-handed guy. I mean, he virtually put down Gamrot with a knee in that fight, wasn't able to follow up. He hurt him with the uppercut as well, wasn't able to follow up. He doesn't have the greatest finishing instincts, especially at this point in his career. I remember he put away Benson Henderson back in the day. But he's just not known as being like a huge power puncher. He's a very thorough guy. And I think I had a little bit of RDA ITD that night. I couldn't believe he didn't finish him, beat him up bad. So yeah, he could take a whooping, but not every time, man. It kind of comes and goes with Moicano. Shout out to my guy, the Jewish Better says that was his first win via KO or TKO. Absolutely. Glenbot says BSD is 7 years younger. That is a notable statistic. Shout out to our guy Mark says, what's good, Liam? Stoked you're going live right now. I'm happy to be here talking with you, my brother. Banger of a card. Let's dive in. Absolutely. Dustin was kind of playing with his food, don't you think? After the first. Playing with his food. I don't know about that. For me, I'll give you my honest interpretation of the fight as somebody who bet Benoit Saint-Denis at minus 130. I think he closed like minus 230 or something like that in the fight, maybe minus 200 or so. When you look at the way that the fight played out, everything that I expected to happen happened in the first round. I did expect it to be Benoit Saint-Denis going to have to get through, some exchanges in the pocket. He's not going to be as clean there. He's going to have to use his durability. But I was like, if he gets a hold of him, he's going to take him down. He's too strong. He's too big. He's going to take his back because Poirier is a guy that tends to give up his back in grappling situations. When guys take him down, he tries to get right back up to his feet. He gives up his back, and he can work from there. He's not a guy who instantly gets submitted from that position. But it is something to note. I think Michael Chandler had his back for significant periods of time. I know Charles Oliveira did. He cashed me nice tickets. I've got his glove up there on the wall as a result. Shout out to Charles. But you look at these, these situations, that's exactly what I expected. I expected Benoit Saint-Denis to get the takedowns, get on top. And if you look out throughout his career, his cardio is sensational. If you look at Benoit Saint-Denis, I'm not saying he's Merab Dvalishvili, but I'm saying if you look at his cardio, he went out there and got beat within an inch of his life by Eliezer Zaleski dos Santos. And he was able to stay in the fight. And not only that, but in round 3, after Zaleski had emptied the tank, Easy Dose was on fumes, breathing, deep breaths in and out. Benoit Saint-Denis was the one pushing the action in round 3 and trying to get back after him after he had been virtually finished in both round 1 and round 2 via TKO. So I think that you look at a guy like Benoit Saint-Denis, he is a special fighter in terms of his attitude, his willingness to come forward. I mean, the one thing you could say is, hey, Dustin Poirier put him down, but he had to put him down physically. He had to literally end him, knock him out, unconscious, sleep him. And if, a guy like Moicano could do that, I would be very impressed. I don't think Moicano is the same punching threat than a guy like Dustin Poirier is. Dustin Poirier hits like a truck, right? He's got very good power in both hands, and you see that, right? He's the knockout leader in the lightweight division for good reason. There's no surprise about that. So I think of a guy like Benoit Saint-Denis as a victim of two things, right? Number one, he was offered a huge opportunity, and it's impossible to say no to that. So I think that he did have staff. He said after the fact he had staff, people said he was making excuses. Maybe he was, right? But sometimes excuses are the truth, right? And in this case, the guy has a visible infection on his face. And what I had heard, what he had said in interviews is he was like, listen, I had an infection, but I dealt with it and I'm fine now. I was like, okay, I'm going to take him at his word. And for me, that was a mistake, right? Because he went out there and then as soon as the fight's over, he tells the truth, which is, I still had a staph infection, but this was the biggest opportunity of my career. And if I could go out there and beat him and finish him in the first round like I expected to, then, it would have been the right decision. But ultimately, I didn't have the cardio to go. He looked gassed to me between rounds 1 and rounds 2. And you could say that was from Poirier doing the guillotine. I gave a lot of credit to Poirier for his strategy there. I think that had a lot to do with it. But this is a guy that I've seen go through the absolute fire multiple times in terms of trying to press the cardio advantage. And he wasn't able to do it against Dustin Poirier when it mattered most. And it could be the lights, it could be the quality of the opponent. But I think part of it was the staph infection. And if you guys have never had staph, I understand. It's hard to conceptualize. If you've never taken antibiotics and then tried to do an athletic endeavor, I understand, but it's really a serious undertaking. I've had both, right? I've had a staph infection before, that was pretty serious. And then I've also had, times in my life where I was, on antibiotics and you almost forget, because you're feeling better, you start to move around a little bit and you're exhausted after 5 minutes. And you're like, man, this is something I can normally do at a sustained pace for a really long time. But antibiotics have a really draining effect on your body. And ultimately, I think, there's no excuse for getting knocked out, right? The defense wasn't there. The hand placement wasn't there. But I think a lot of that had to do with fatigue. And Benoit Saint-Denis, he's got a lot of questions to answer in this fight. Number one, how's he going to respond to adversity? He's lost before in the UFC. What did he do? He rattled off a 5-fight win streak, multiple finishes, went out there, got a lot of wins in Paris, did his thing in France for the UFC. So he's done his job for the company. He's gone out there and delivered more often than not. And he took a huge step up in competition against the boss, right? He comes out to James Brown, paid the cost to be the boss. Dustin Poirier, an all-time lightweight, a guy who's worthy of respect. And he wasn't able to get the job done there. I'm not ready to sell him down the river, but I'm not, jazzed up by the prospect to go lay a minus 2XX price tag by his name either, right? Let's go ahead and do something that we love to do on this show, which is look back at our previous bets on these fighters so we can get an idea of whether or not we should be, taking these odds on them that we're being offered right now. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and share our screen. We're on betmma.tips. All my bets are tracked on here for the last, several years. You guys can go back and look. If you ever have questions, you can go ahead and do that. But here we go, right? Looking at my previous bets, I actually bet huge on Easy Dos Santos at minus 2XX against Benoit Saint-Denis because I was like, you're giving me an extremely talented, proven UFC fighter at what I thought was a reasonable implied win probability against a lightweight, right? Like this is a guy who knocked out Sean Strickland at 170 pounds. And you're saying that he's only, 70% to, beat a lightweight in the UFC. That just seemed to me like a mistake of a line. And if you guys watch that fight, it didn't look very close, right? Easy Dose beat him very, very bad. And I think that when you look at a guy like Easy Dose, he's quality. He's dangerous. And the fact that he was not able to find the kill shot on a Benoit Saint-Denis who was out on his feet essentially multiple times, it just speaks to the toughness, the warrior spirit of Benoit Saint-Denis. He has no quit in him. You can, again, knock him out. You can choke him to sleep. I've always said there's no tough guy in a choke, right? If you're in a choke for long enough that's properly applied, you're just going to sleep like anybody else. But this guy, Benoit Saint-Denis, he's a special guy in terms of his will, his want to win. And we got the reaction bonus, right? Benoit Saint-Denis against Ismael Bonfim. He was a plus 250 underdog, a regrettably small bet for me, guys. That should have been a multi-unit play. We were getting the tougher guy, in my humble opinion, who wanted it better, and who honestly just came with a much smarter approach. If you rewatch that fight, Bonfim gets hit with multiple body kicks right off the rip, because he keeps a very high boxing type of guard, right? Imagine he's coming out here, with a pretty high guard, and he gets hit with whack, 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 body kick, body kick, body kick. He does not address it. He points to his body and says, like, give me more. And Benoit Saint-Denis is like, much obliged, sir, and just hits him again and again and again with those body kicks and absolutely closed the show. Was able to hurt him bad, then get on top of him, take his back, and put in the rear naked choke. That's all she wrote. plus 250 underdog, not to be seen again. Right now, he's a minus 113 the next time out against Thiago Moises, right? Virtual pick'em price. And I was saying to myself, listen, let's pull up the actual breakdown so we're not speaking out of our tuchus here. But the guy at the time had never lost at 155 pounds. So keep in mind, he has one loss at 155 pounds, guys. It's to Dustin Poirier. So very, very quality loss. Sorry, zoomed in too much. And then he is the younger fighter, 3-inch reach advantage, 2-inch height advantage. He was the bigger guy in that fight, throws more volume. And we had seen that Moises flakes out under pressure. And we've seen that this is a guy that brings that pressure, right? And I thought he was going to beat Dustin Poirier. I just got to own that one, right? I'll always tell you guys when I win. I'll tell you guys when I lose. I thought he was going to win that fight, and I was disappointed. I had a lot of reasons to bet him. He has done very well as a favorite in the UFC. At the time, he was undefeated in the lightweight division. He had all the anthropomorphic advantages. He checked a lot of boxes for me. But ultimately, you see that a guy like Dustin Poirier, he just is the man. You got to just give some credit and respect to one of these guys who stuck around for a long time, done the damn thing at a high level, and he took on a challenge that, frankly, I didn't think he was going to take. I thought he was going to duck out of the fight. When they initially canceled the fight, I was like, you know what? That doesn't surprise me. I thought that Dustin Poirier was making a career management decision, and then he ends up taking the fight and sunning him. I just got to give a clap for him. That's a real feather in his cap at his age to go out there and get that win. That's how he got a title shot, right? So Benoit Saint-Denis, still a quality fighter, still a very quality opponent. And a guy like Renato Moicano, for me, does fit a different kind of bill, right? He does want the money. He wants the accolades, the attributes, right? At 35 years of age, he wants these checks. He wants to go out there and get main event fights, get big spots and big opportunities. But I'm not sure he's as, committed to the wanting to be a world champion, right? Like, I think that a guy like Benoit Saint-Denis, he really wants to be a world champion. He wants to find a way to break through to that upper echelon. When he suffered that loss, he was instantly thinking, how do I change my training situation in order to get to the next level? And I think that that's the kind of sign of a guy who really wants to take this journey all the way to the top. A guy like Moicano, he's got a lot of side projects, right? He's doing his crypto stuff. He's got his podcast going on, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Hats off to him. At 35 years of age, he's branching out, looking for his ability to, find a path beyond fighting, another revenue stream, whatever you want to call it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's all respect for him. But I do think that when you look at who wants this batter, I think it is Benoit Saint-Denis. And I think if one of these guys gets hurt, I think the guy who's more likely to rally is Benoit Saint-Denis in that kind of adversity, in that kind of situation. Now, the other one credence I will give to Moicano is he has all the talent in the grappling, and he's got these long limbs. The one thing I will say is he may be able to present some interesting threats and challenges as a seasoned black belt that has a fantastic, use of his limbs, right? He can take the back very well. He's pretty dexterous with those positions. And I also think that, Benoit Saint-Denis showed some of those vulnerabilities in terms of dipping that head and neck, offering some guillotine situations. He did all the right things in terms of rolling flat back in order to prevent the guillotine, rolling all the way through to finish the takedown. But those are labor intensive. Those are things that will cost you energy. And I think that in this kind of fight, he's going to want to be smart about how he approaches it. I think that if he's able to push Moicano into the clinch, beat him up along the fence line, and or try and engage him at distance, with clinch hooks, basically getting in to his kitchen, right? He wants to get in close. He wants to get hands on him and put doubt in his mind. I think if he's able to do that to Moicano, that's where he's going to open up the best opportunities for himself, either in close quarters in the boxing or at distance. The other thing I will note is Renato Moicano, big, long torso. He's got experience in kickboxing, right? But we know BSD drills those body kicks. He throws them very, very hard. And when you've got a big, long torso like that, I do wonder, how is Moicano going to take those shots if BSD is able to get off with his body kicking game? Poirier is very clever and crafty with some of the things he does to try and prevent that, in terms of blocking with the elbows and the knees, looking for ways to punish people when they do that with the short hooks, with the hooks to the body. I think that Moicano is not as comfortable as a striker there. So for me, this is a really interesting fight because it's not a layup. It's not an easy fight for Benoit Saint-Denis on the comeback, but it is a winnable fight. It's a fight where he's got the age advantage going his way. He is a guy that can go out there and compete with Moicano, in my opinion, on the feet. Whether that's with his devastating high kick that he landed on Frivola, that's a tool that he could look to implement. His body kicks that he broke out against Bonfim, that's a tool he could look to implement. The hooks and the, basically just wrestling to turtle position and then landing a lot of heavy ground and pound. That's how he beat up Thiago Moises as well. Guys, all for your support. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And I think that the closing thoughts I'll give you on the main event is that I like Benoit Saint-Denis, but I don't love the price. I think it is a little bit price prohibitive. I respect Renato Moicano. I think he's a good fighter. So I'm hoping a lot of money comes in on Moicano. I think there's some respect behind him. I think there's some popular, betting podcasts in the space and things like that, where Moicano is affiliated with them. I think there's going to be, that kind of public push for him over the course of the week. And I think that if you look, Moicano deserves some respect at the window. But for me, I've always been a Benoit Saint-Denis believer, and when I've looked to fade him, it's with huge welterweights that I thought could go out there and knock him out. And I don't think that Moicano necessarily fits that bill. So for me, I'm looking towards Benoit Saint-Denis getting this one done, but it might be some early adversity. He might have to deal with, some calf kicks and some tough situations, but I think he's got the heart, the toughness, and he's a damn soldier. So let's see if the special forces can get it done for the French once again in Paris at the Accor Arena.